don't give in. Yeah. Miles and miles you will have been.
Well, hello everybody, it's Suffolk Andy here in Hadley in Suffolk. I thought I'd show you this little spot, big old Hadley church there, and beautiful old churchyard. And over there you can see some brick towers. I think they're mock Tudor, they might be Tudor, I'm not sure, without going over and looking at the bricks and telling you that. I can't actually see from here, but what a place, eh? What a day. It's red hot, it's beautiful. Right, today I'm going to have a go at answering one of the questions I was given on my challenge to talk about anything from my subscribers. And I'm going to name the culprit when I tell you the subject he's gave me. And I had to write it down because it's quite complicated. So here we go. The role of the male in the modern day relationship and how it has changed. Thank you, Captain Cranky. The role of the male in the modern day relationship and how it has changed. My God. Okay. I'm going to have a go at this. Well, right, let's get on the bike and start the subject, I suppose. Where do we begin? Well, I think I have to begin with a very short history lesson. And that is, in times past, women in power. We always think that in history women didn't have a lot to say in how things evolved and changed. But there were certain times in history where they had ultimate power. And if we go back and think of, say, Queen Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen, absolute power. Her sister Mary had absolute power. And in the Middle Ages, there was 3 or 4 queens who were called the She-Wolves. And they delved in the politics of the time to great effect. So women did have some power years ago. But I'm going to bring us up into the modern era now. And we've got to think when these things really started to change was just before the First World War and Second World War. First World War, men went out and fought in their droves and died in their droves in the trenches. It was expected of them. They soon found out that nobody was left to make the shells, the tanks, the planes and everything else. And the ladies took over the job, and they done it bloody well. They kept the war effort going, kept all that equipment going. So the difference was, before the First World War, women weren't expected. They weren't expected to do anything really. They couldn't. They weren't capable. But this proved they were. And the same happened in the Second World War. The men went off to fight, and the women made the equipment, flew some of the planes, not in action, but to deliver them and everything else, and proved their worth. Right, after the First World War, it was pretty obvious that women had a bigger role to play in society. So the next thing they got was the vote, which I think is proper and right, and they deserved it. So they got the vote. Second World War, it changed a lot. It changed society. It changed the way we thought and the way we think about men and women. Anyway, I'm going to tell you a little story now about around in the 20s. My club that I run was built in 1927. It's an old railway club. It isn't anymore, but it was. And down the road was a marshalling yard, or railway yard, whatever you want to call it, with hundreds of men who used to work there. Now on a Friday, payday, the women used to gather in great numbers. And it was only to make sure when the men came out that they got their money. Their housekeeping, because if they didn't, the men would go into the 2 pubs, the Great Eastern and Here You Are, get drunk, play cards and lose all their money, and the kids and the women would go hungry. So the women used to turn up, make sure they got their money off their husbands, so they didn't go hungry. So that was what it was like. Now, how things have changed. Society has changed. With these incidents that I was talking about the wars and how women's roles evolved, it gave women more power, and so should it be. If you think about it nowadays, there's not the incidents where men go out, get drunk all the time, and waste their money on beer and cards, and their kids and wife go hungry. It doesn't happen anymore, but it was the norm in them days. So, let's bring it up to date now. I think personally, society has changed. We couldn't go on the way we were. In them days, there was a lot of cruelty from men to women and children, a lot of drunkenness and all the rest. Didn't mean the men didn't care, because they did, but they were brought up in a different society than what we're brought up in today. Our society is completely different to that society in the First World War, Second World War. So they were brought up in a different society. It was the way things were done, and things are not done like that anymore. So let's go back to the modern man. A lot of men today were not brought up by the traditional family. They weren't. A lot of families now are one-parent families. A lot of boys are brought up in a household where there's just a female. No parental guidance from a male. Now, I'm not saying that this makes that boy any different to somebody who's been brought up in a traditional family, but I think there's a slight difference. I think a young male needs another male in the household to give him some guidance. Now, I think also we try to understand women more than what they did years ago. I think they thought that women were more of a shackle. Women had a lot more children in them days. They had, 3 or 4, 13, sometimes 15. My mother was one of 13. So they had a lot of children in them days. I don't think they had much tully. So they couldn't have nothing else to do but sex, I think. But anyway, that was the way it was in them days. So families were bigger. There wasn't the pressure as such as there is today. Now, I'm now going a bit off subject now, but if you think about it, they talk about the fertility of the European countries is falling. And there's a reason for that. It's because men cannot support a family anymore. They don't usually earn enough. Unless they're in a big high-powered job, they don't earn enough. So women have to go out to work, and that's usually to support their husbands, or the pair of them together, to make ends meet. So that puts pressure on having children. Western women don't have so many children because most of the time they have to work to survive, to pay the huge rents and the huge mortgages, which is such a pity, really. So I'm going off topic now a little bit, but I think with men, and I'll be truthful here, I don't think men really understand women that much, but I think we try more today to understand a woman and to try and make sure she's okay. And I don't think they did so much years ago. They were more brought up in a more harder, how can I put it, harder society where men had a stiff upper lip and you weren't allowed to show your emotions. You had to be that tough man. And I think that's the difference today. I think we're more softer men today. Some men actually are quite effeminate. I'm not saying they're gay or anything like that, but some heterosexual men are quite soft today. They're not like they were years ago. They wouldn't have survived years ago in some of the workplaces, in the factories and building works and stuff like that. They would have struggled. But so I think that's the difference. I think society has moulded us now into a different sort of man than what we were 100 years ago, and even 60, 70 years ago after the Second World War. So I think that's the change. I know myself. My own father was one of the old stiff upper lip chaps, never show a lot of emotions. And sometimes I used to think, oh, Royce Dad, you know, be a little bit more sort of softer. But I didn't realise until he got older and he got ill and he sadly passed away, that he was as soft as butter. But he wouldn't show it. But he showed at the end. And that was the best thing. So that old man who had that stip upper lip that he had wasn't like that at all. He was as soft as butter. So that just shows that these men had it in them. But they weren't allowed to show it because society has changed, made us softer, made us more respectful, and I think that's the difference. I don't think women actually understand us men. They don't realise us men are like Peter Pans. We never grow up. We like our boy ties. Look, I'm on one now, look. We like our boy ties. And we never grow up. We're like children. And if they realised that, I think they'd understand us better. So I hope you know where I'm coming from. I hope that's answered your question, Captain Cranky. He is our favourite Irishman who lives in Aussie. Makes some bloody good vlogs, especially with those Aussie friends of ours. And I get sick of him sometimes because he's got such bloody good weather. But not today. I've got it. So thank you for that question. I hope I've answered some of it. I found that one a bit tricky, but I hope I've done the trick. Well, anyway, I think that's enough from me. All ride safe. Certainly love each other. Suffolk Andy.